Hi, it's Rob here. Welcome to Apply Intermediate Object-Oriented Languages Skills, which is part of the Diploma of Software Development at Hornsby TAFE. You can see my name there, you can see the unit code, and my personal email address if you need to contact me. It'll be this course, or rather this unit, is part of a variety of different diplomas, including the Web Diploma. So depending on which diploma that you're studying, it will be introduced to you in different ways. So in this case, we'll be looking at more desktop development. If you did the web version of the same unit, you would probably be more looking at ASP web development. So let's get on to the next slide. There you go. Course prerequisites. Look, it's expected that you do have previous programming experience, preferably in an object-oriented programming language. But if you have professional experiences in like procedural languages, you should be fine. You will have to experience a little bit of a learning curve understanding OOP concepts, but just the fact that you've worked as a programmer for many years, you should find it okay. You just have to keep a little bit more of an open mind and maybe change some of the approaches that you would typically take in a procedural language. If you've got C# experience either professionally or you've done the certificate course, look, let's just go through the intro, but once we get to the IDE, Visual Studio, you can probably switch off at that point. If you've Java or Objective-C or some other object-oriented language, definitely, if you've got no experience in Visual Studio, follow through the introduction to the IDE. And I know people argue, probably correctly, that C and C++ aren't object-oriented languages, but look, I think you're going to find the similarity between C and C# an easy stretch as far as the learning curve goes. Just down the bottom there, I don't know, I think you probably will struggle a bit if you don't have a Windows PC or laptop available to you. You can always come into TAFE. I guess the point to note here is if you've got a Mac at home, you can't run Visual Studio, so that's not going to be much use to you in this course in general. So if you've got a Windows PC at work, otherwise you can transit to Hornsby TAFE. We've got plenty of PCs you can use, but it's going to take a bit of your time. So hopefully you do have a Windows PC or laptop computer, and you'll be able to develop your skills using that. You can also use ours at TAFE, but if you're coming to TAFE and you've got a laptop, bring your laptop with you. It's going to be a lot easier overall. The lessons for this unit, you can see there. The introduction is what we're doing now, and the IDE. Nuts and bolts is really for those people who haven't really had any C# exposure or very little. I'm not going to teach you the basics of C#, but we're just going to run over all the basics like classes and variables and methods, namespacing, the using statement, things like that, just to help you get on the way. Basically the idea there is so that by the time we get to lesson 3, everyone's on the same page, and we'll be learning, as you can see, a variety of different intermediate language skills, finishing with unit testing, which I sort of consider an advanced skill, but it is part of the course guidelines, so that'll be fun, and I think you'll enjoy it all. Just note there, creating a UI WinForms. So we'll be doing a WinForms, which is the sort of bit old school, but it's a lot simpler than WPF. In the advanced unit, which I'll also be taking, we'll be looking at WPF, and that'll be good. It'll push you a little bit, but it'll also be a great introduction to XAML, and pretty much all the skills that you learn there, you'll be able to transform across to Windows Phone development. And in general, as far as all this goes, 80%, 90% of what you learn here you'll be able to use in web development as well. So the assessments, This is a graded unit, so this is one of the units that you really want to focus on. Try and get that credit, try and get that distinction. The others are ungraded, so you'll either be not yet competent or competent, which is just a nice way of saying pass or fail. So obviously you've got to get across the line on the non-graded units, but the graded units I recommend that you focus on and do as well as you possibly can, because at the end of the day you'll get your diploma, and wherever there's an opportunity to get a credit or distinction, I'm sure you want to get that. Regardless of whether they're graded or ungraded, with me at least, you'll have a task for every lesson. You'll have to complete it. You'll have to submit it to Moodle. I will review it during class time, and if I'm not happy, I'll email you and tell you where you need to work on. And the reason for that is previously I used to stand up in class and give presentations. Now with this flexible learning where you don't have to come to class, I'm really conscious on being able to find out early if you're struggling with any of the subject matter. So that's the main reason for that, is if I find you're struggling, I'll be able to hopefully catch up fairly quickly with you and get you on track. If you know you're struggling, come into class. I'll be in class. I'm more than happy to help you. It's good fun, and I can show you some, some extra things that you may not be aware of by studying at home. Being a graded assessment, you will have a written test at the end of the unit, and you will have an assignment. Fortunately, all the tasks, well, as much as possible, your lesson tasks will be things that you build on over the weeks. So when it comes to the end of the term, probably 80% of the assignment you'll have already completed just by completing those tasks for each lesson. So now resources. Look, you have to be resourceful. I can't hold your hand. In previous years, I've actually given access to the students to my code. It's actually a bad idea because you just get lazy. You're going to have to cut the code. You're going to have to be resourceful yourself. At TAFE, DreamSparks, which formerly had this really long acronym, you'll get a lot of goodies, a lot of software, SQL Server, definitely Visual Studio 2013 or 12, whatever it is. Previously you used to get the Ultimate Edition, so I'm hoping for that. But for what we're doing, you won't need the Ultimate Edition, and we'll look at that in a minute. Keywords, think about the search criteria that you put into Google or Bing. You'll learn as you go along which is the right way to go. I put that up there, it's obvious, but one thing you've got to be aware of is, particularly with some of the newer technologies, is particularly with mobile device development, is what may have been the correct answer in 2010 could well be the wrong answer in 2013 going forward. So just be a little bit aware of the age of what you're reading, because it could be out of date. I put Code Project up there at the top. It's a specialist, really, .NET website. It doesn't seem to come up in your searches, so you might want to visit there and search on that website, because there's a wealth of good information, lots of forums, but a huge amount of articles that people have written, and some of them are excellent. Stack Overflow, look, you'll bump into that a lot when you're doing your searches. And there's the MSDN forums. The last one, join a user group. You go to Seek and things like that. They're typically the tip of the iceberg of the jobs that are available out there, and they're also the ones where maybe the employers are particular or whatever. If you join a user group, you'll meet people, you'll make contacts, and it's probably more likely that you'll get a job there than you will on Seek. I probably shouldn't say that. That may not be true, but definitely you'll make contacts, and through contacts, we needed Windows forms developed. Does anyone know anyone? Oh, well, I go to this .NET user group. I know someone. He's just finished his diploma, or she's just finished their diploma. So get a job like that, you're not competing with everyone else. And plus, obviously, you learn a lot at the same time. Now, for those who are quite familiar with Visual Studio, you can switch off now. You still have to do your assignment, but for those who have little or no exposure to C#, I strongly recommend that you continue on through this part of the tutorial. So using the IDE, if you don't know what an IDE is, maybe you should be doing the certificate course, but it stands for Integrated Development Environment. And in C# there's only really one to use. There's one called Mono, but the one everyone uses is Visual Studio. If you do hear about Mono is a great idea. I really wish them the best. But with Visual Studio, the idea is that you can write in different languages and it will compile down to an executable that will run on the .NET framework. And you can only run the .NET framework on a Windows operating system, whereas Mono you can write C# and compile for Linux or maybe even Mac, I'm not sure, but it supports multiple platforms. And the people there have done a great job, but it's a big ask. We're going to use Visual Studio, and I've written a list of a few things of why you'd want to use IDE. Look, if you want to go through a lot of pain, you can just open up a text editor like Notepad, write your code. If you've got typos in there you wouldn't know. There's a whole lot of problems. If you haven't got a semicolon at the end of your statement, it's not going to pick it up. You can then open up your command prompt, write some statements there, execute some statements, and you can actually compile a C# application without using Visual Studio. But there are thousands of good reasons that you'd want to use an IDE, so unless you're a sadomasochist, you're going to use Visual Studio. Now time for the demo, but before we start off with the demo, I just want to point out a few things. Let's go to Moodle first. I've got to log on. But just notice the address up there, webdev.mdl2, not md12.com. And I'll just go to my home page. You'll see Hornsby IT have created a number of course categories. The ones we're interested in here is the Diploma of Software Development. If you click on that, you'll see Giovanni's got his database and project management happening. He's sort of handling his as a stream. I'm going to handle mine in the individual units. This is the one that we'll be looking at. I can turn on editing, I won't. You guys probably won't have that feature. But typically I'll have my lesson here. I'll have some resources here. I'll have the assignment as a PDF so you can read the assignment. But then down here with this little hand here, this is the actual task, the assignment that you have to complete. So I'm not sure how it actually works at this point, but you click on there, you as a student do what you have to do, and it will allow you to submit your work to me, and then I'll be able to mark it for you. But each class will be marked, as you can see, this class, nuts and bolts, and the list is down there, so that'll fill up as we get through the course. The other thing I want to show you just quickly is here's the home page for Visual Studio. You'll see they'll be spruiking different add-ons and features and things like that. But if we go to the downloads page, you'll see the paid versions first. Hopefully we will get Ultimate and Dream Sparks, but typically this is the one that most professional people use in commercial software development, because Ultimate and Premium are very expensive. But if you look down further, you'll see Visual Studio 2000 Express Editions. You can develop pretty much anything with these. Sometimes you've got to close out of one, open up another and do stuff. But in the short term, if you haven't got your DreamSparks account, go for this Visual Studio Express 2012 for Windows Desktop. you can actually do the whole course with this Express Edition. You don't need the Ultimate, but obviously if you're like me, you want to get your hands on the greatest and newest. So once DreamSparks comes through, if you've got the space on your hard drive, go the Ultimate. But if you need to get started, use this Visual Studio Express version for desktop. Okay, if you open Visual Studio, it will probably come up. I can't recreate it. It'll ask you sort of what your settings want to be. Go for the C# settings. Typically you'll find your editor in here, and we'll look at that in a minute. But Microsoft, there's some good stuff here. I'd become familiar with some of it. I typically will say select something like getting started with Visual Studio. Why not? But it will come up with a link. I'll copy that link into my web browser, bookmark it or whatever. I don't particularly like using this web browsery stuff in my Visual Studio, but that's up to you. Back to the start page. Down here we want to create a new project. So they're trying to make it as easy as possible. I selected Visual C# settings, so that's why they're there first, but the other languages are also available to you. So if you pick Visual Studio, you can click down here and see Visual Basic, sorry, you can click down here and you'll see your C# ones. These, well, maybe empty project isn't. Well, I guess it is still a template, but all of these are templates, and basically what they do is they save you cutting a lot of code just to get up and running when you want to create a different type of project. Excuse me. We'll definitely be doing a Windows form. I'm not going to do a console app. I'm sure you've seen it before. That's normally the Hello World type of application that you'll create. I'm going to create a class library, so it'll create some boilerplate code for me. I'm going to give this library the name of Zoo Business. With the double S. You'll see how this works later on once we get into multi-tiered development, but a project will be wrapped in a solution. I'm going to call my solution Zoo, and like I say, you'll see later on in this course why you would want to have many projects part of one solution. But once again, the IDE will do that for you for free, so I'm happy with the name. The location, look, you can battle and change that, put it where you want, but I honestly recommend that you just go with the flow with all that sort of stuff. And you'll see it's in my documents under Visual Studio 2012 projects. I recommend you follow that, otherwise you'll be continually navigating through the Windows Explorer to find your files and add files and things like that. Like I say, it's up to you. I would just go with the flow. Go for the defaults. So I'll spin up, and here's my editor. So in here is some C# code, but over here is what's called a Windows a tool window, and they're quite interesting things, and you can get yourself into a lot of trouble with them, but you can pin them or unpin them. See that little pin there? I can unpin that, and you'll see it will just slip down to the side here, and you can pop them out and pin them as you like. You can actually drag them around, and you'll see some little helper icons here to decide where you want to put it. So you could put it over there. So if you're used to Eclipse or Xcode or something like that as an IDE, you may want it over there. Might just for the short term put it back where it was. And if I've pinned it in there. If you've got a nice large desktop monitor, you'll probably want a lot of this stuff pinned out in front of you all the time. But if you're working on a small desktop laptop, you might want to hide it. So here it's hidden in the toolbox. There's probably not much of a tool, not too many tools available to me here at the moment. So you need to get used to these. I don't know what I've done now, but anyway, something's happened. And we can, probably the most important one is your Solution Explorer. To a larger degree, it replicates what's on the hard drive. But this is where you'll typically go to, say, add a different item. So you can go add new item, and once again you'll get the templates, but they're different now. They're not project templates. They're different class templates. So if I wanted to create a Windows form, I'd change the name here to whatever I wanted, and then go add, and it will add it hopefully to my project. It will. You can also add folders here, so you can organize the structure of your project, and we'll look at that later on. Here you'll see that I don't so much have a text editor, I have what's called a designer, and there's a number of designers available in Visual Studio. This is the Forms designer, and typically in my Forms designer I will have properties which I can pin, not quite the way I wanted to, but you can select an object, in this case the form. I can look at the properties, and I've got a whole lot of settings I can set there. You'll also notice that the toolbox has come into play now, and it's providing me with a lot of different tools, controls that I can, say, stick on my, that one didn't work so well, but this one will. I can put text boxes and stuff like that. So depending on the type of class that you're working with will depend on whether you get the text editor or whether you get a designer. You don't have to work with the designer in some cases. In some cases you can look at the text behind. That is actually what you call the code behind. With the form here, the form designer code comes in here. Look, I would say if you are going to use the designers, it tells you quite clearly here, do not modify the contents of this method, because one of two things will happen. Either you'll break the designer, or it'll just get written over once you go back to your designer mode and add something, so any changes may be changed and removed. So I wouldn't typically recommend you go into the designer class code behind, but definitely for every form there's code behind, and that's where you are supposed to write your own custom code. Now once I showed you that these tool windows you can drag and drop wherever you want. There's a heap of them. One of them is probably very useful, and that's your error list. So when you go and build your solution and you have errors, they'll be listed there, so you can systematically go through and fix each error, so that you can get a clean, compiled, executable, and then you can run your code. Up here there's a lot of menu items, pretty standard there. Edit, pretty standard for most Windows applications. Here's quite interesting. Once again, a lot of these tool windows are available to you, and you'll discover them as you learn how to use the ID more. There's also some that they think you may use less, but could be equally as useful depending on what you're doing. You've got toolbars, so yeah, pretty much, except for the different tool windows, pretty much what you'd expect under the view. Managing your project, so once again we were here and I added a class, but you can also go into project and add a form or class or whatever you want. We'll definitely be playing in this space. We'll definitely be playing in the build space where we're building our application. Later on in debugging, there's some essential stuff there we'll be looking at. We won't be looking at team. That's where you're working with a team of developers in a collaborative environment. Typically Team Foundation Studio, that's what that does. That's a server that links everyone's works together. We probably won't be playing in there. Tools, we'll have a little look. There's a few things we want to look at there. Test, we probably won't. We'll be using something called NUnit, so we may not use that. I'm not sure how well integrated 2013 is with NUnit, but we'll see. Architecture, yeah, look, we won't be in that space at all. Analyze, I doubt it, you never know. And then Windows, typical Windows sort of, all the windows that are available to you, and once again help, pretty typical sort of stuff. So you have these tool windows that are available to you. You can hide them, pin them, whatever you want to do. You've got your editor window, which is very standard, but of course the editor window can also show designers. You can have whatever attitude you want towards designers. My attitude is typically either I use them to the nth degree and I do as much work as possible with the designer, or I don't use it at all. So once we move to XAML, we start looking at WPF, you'll see, I don't know, I'll revisit it for 2013, but I typically only use it to have a look and see what my form will look like. I tend to write all my code with XAML. So that's a quick overview of the IDE. It offers a whole lot of other things. So like if I'm writing here, I can write, say, system. Oh, sorry about that. And you know what's going to happen now? My voice is going to hum. Damn. Anyway, I'll take that out. It'll squawk at me. I'll finish off this presentation because I know you'll end up with a hum. But IntelliSense is a great thing. So you'll get this drop down where you can pick what you want. So I can select system tab dot and select things like this. So definitely use IntelliSense. That'll save you a lot of effort. And there's a whole lot of other tools and little shortcuts to format your code that we'll look at as we go on in the course as I give presentations. So before I run out of battery, I'll finish it up there. So that's your introduction to Visual Studio. Next week we'll be doing nuts and bolts. So if you haven't had too much experience, I recommend you go there. And I'm going to close this tutorial now before either I run out of battery or that seagull pesters once more. So till next week, happy coding. Try and complete your assignment. Check out Moodle, sorry. And if you complete your assignment, that's great. The one last thing I probably need to show you is that once you've changed your settings, you can go up here, Tools, and go Import and Export Settings. So if you've rearranged your IDE the way you like it, you can export your settings and follow that wizard through. That's what you will need to do to provide me with your VS settings file. So you'll find in the assignment you'll have to go and move things around, change things around, and then export your environment settings and email them to me. If, like I'm sure some of you will, get totally messed up, you'll lose things, you won't know what's going on, you can always reset to the default settings. And obviously you can import ones. So export, save somewhere other than your hard drive, so when your computer fails, you'll be able to rebuild your computer and then you'll be able to import your favorite settings. If you get lost and you want to reset to the original, go reset settings. No, just reset, don't override anything. And this is probably the screen you first appeared when you started Visual Studio for the first time. If so, if you haven't done it, just select Visual C#. So I'll finish there. And unfortunately the only other thing I wanted to show, but I'm running out of battery more than time, is down here under Tools. So there's your import and export settings I just showed you. Here's Tools, Options, sorry. You can go in here, you can customize it to your heart's content. Set it to dark. You can change anything and everything there. And play around with it, because you can always go and reset the settings afterwards. Some of them you will want to change for certain reasons, some of them you won't need to. Anyway, that's it for the tutorial, thanks to battery power, and I look forward to seeing you in Nuts and Bolts next week.